Hi. My name's Odalis, and the night my husband walked out, my sister clapped, not out of shock, out of satisfaction. My mother stood in the kitchen, silent, like it had all gone exactly as planned. I was holding 2 babies. He didn't look back. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how long they'd been waiting for that moment. They didn't break me that night, but they came close. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this, and where from? Because what I'm about to tell you might sound like something no mother would ever do, but mine did. And my sister? She smiled while it happened. Let's begin. I stood frozen at the doorway of our kitchen, holding both babies in my arms, one nestled against my shoulder, the other fussing quietly against my chest. Beckett couldn't meet my eyes. His fingers fidgeted with the wedding ring on his hand, the one we picked together at that tiny little antique store in East Nashville, back when we still made each other laugh without trying. He exhaled hard. Then those words came out. Not loud, not cruel, just tired. I can't do this anymore. He didn't wait for me to respond. He turned, walked toward the front door like he was just stepping out for milk. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. And then, a clap. One sharp, echoing clap. It came from the kitchen doorway behind Beckett. Callista, my older sister, arms folded across her neatly pressed cream blouse, smirked like a woman who'd just won a bet. "Told you it wouldn't last," she said, like she was commenting on the weather. "Some people just aren't built for commitment." Beckett paused at the door but didn't look back. I didn't say a word, couldn't. My throat closed like a door slammed from the inside. He left, just like that. The babies whimpered, maybe sensing the shift. My body moved on its own, slow, mechanical steps toward the worn couch in the living room. I sat, held them close. My arms trembled, but I wouldn't let them see me fall apart. The front door stayed shut. The silence afterward was louder than any fight we ever had. Years earlier, the same silence had crawled over me at our wedding. We held the reception at a converted barn out in Franklin, twinkly lights, catered barbecue, a string band. It was my idea. Beckett said it felt authentic, which is a word he used a lot when he wanted to sound like he cared. Callista, ever the scene stealer, volunteered to give a toast. She clinked her glass with a silver fork, then raised it high like she was opening a Broadway show. "Well," she began, looking directly at me. "Let's all hope this one lasts longer than her other hobbies. Remember when she wanted to be a pastry chef, or a yoga instructor, or that whole garden blog phase?" Laughter. Loud, indulgent laughter. I smiled. God help me, I actually smiled, because what else could I do? Our mother, Velda, sat at the head table, sipping wine like a queen on her throne. She didn't laugh, didn't scowl, just nodded like everything said had been perfectly appropriate. Even Beckett chuckled a little, nervous, awkward, but he didn't defend me. And I laughed too, because that's what I'd been trained to do since childhood. Take the hit, keep the peace. But that laughter sat heavy inside me for months, years even. Back in the present, night had crept in. I didn't notice the sunset, didn't turn on a single light. The twins slept beside me now, small bodies curved against mine. I stared into the dark, the street lamp outside casting a weak orange glow across the coffee table. My mind circled one question. Did they plan this all along? Not just the end of my marriage, the erasure of me, the things they said, the jokes, the way Beckett always seemed to be pulled toward Callista's opinion when we argued. The times Velda would call and tell me to be patient with him, like I was the problem for wanting more than silence at dinner or help at 3 a.m. when the babies were teething. I thought I had a family. I really did. The knock on the door made me jump. My stomach flipped, some ridiculous part of me thinking it might be him coming back. But it was just a courier. No words, just a padded envelope with no return address. Inside, a glossy 8x10 wedding photo from that day in Franklin. Everyone lined up under the twinkly lights, except I wasn't in it. I wasn't just in the back or blurred out. I'd been cropped out. cleanly, like I had never been there at all. There was a sticky note attached. Thought you might want a copy. Oh wait, you're not in this one. No signature, but I knew the handwriting. Callista's. I stared at the photo, throat burning. They didn't just want me to feel abandoned, they wanted me erased. I placed the photo face down on the counter. My hand shook, but I didn't cry. I was tired of crying, tired of swallowing pain like it was part of breakfast. The twins stirred softly in the next room. I stood, walked to their crib, and watched them sleep. "We're not going to break," I whispered to them. "Not yet." I backed out of the room, walked toward the bedroom. Every step felt heavier than the last. There, tucked in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, was the envelope. I hadn't touched it in months, not since I first drafted it on a night when Beckett forgot our anniversary and Callista called me needy for being upset. It was sealed now, labeled, stamped, ready. A letter I'd written not to Beckett, but to a lawyer. I picked it up and pressed it to my chest. I didn't know if I'd send it, but tonight, for the first time, I didn't feel afraid to. The envelope was already addressed, to the woman who gave birth to me but never really claimed me. I held it for a long while that night, until my arms ached from staying still. Eventually, I slipped it back in the drawer and shut it gently, like I might wake someone. But the house was silent, the kind of silence you learn to live with after a while, and just like that, I slipped, backward, into a time before the twins, before the clap, before I understood just how far people would go to make sure you never felt like you belonged. It was the day I told Beckett I was pregnant. He laughed, actually laughed, picked me up right off the floor of our kitchen and spun me around, careful not to knock over the carton of eggs on the counter. "You're kidding," he whispered, his forehead resting on mine. "You're serious?" "I am," I said, and for that one brief, shining moment, I believed we were going to be something unbreakable. 2 weeks later, we were at his mother's home. Margaret Montgomery didn't host parties. She hosted exhibitions of status, polished marble floors, servers in uniform, cold cuts that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. That night was in celebration of local philanthropic women, though you'd be hard-pressed to find a soul in that room who had ever written a check without expecting their name etched into a plaque. I wore a simple cream dress, stretchy enough to be comfortable, still modest. I hadn't bought maternity clothes yet. I was barely showing. Still, I felt like I stood out. Not in a good way. Women floated past me in gowns that shimmered, their bracelets clinking against champagne flutes. I'd barely stepped into the foyer before someone said, "Oh, Beckett, is this your current fiancé?" He didn't correct them. He just laughed softly. "Yeah, she's Odalis. That's all. Not my wife, not the mother of my children, not even the love of my life, which I wouldn't have expected, but still." They all smiled, the tight-lipped kind of smiles that don't reach the eyes, like they'd been expecting someone else. I tried not to let it show, smiled back, said something polite about the centerpiece arrangement. Later that evening, when we were alone near the garden steps, I asked him quietly, "Did I hear that right? They think we're engaged?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "They don't mean anything by it. You know how formal this circle can be." "This circle," I repeated. He didn't say more. That was the beginning of it, when his words started shrinking, when his gaze began drifting past me like I was slowly becoming wallpaper in his life. And from there, it got worse. Velda didn't call once, not even to ask how far along I was, not even when I ended up in urgent care one night after fainting from low blood pressure. I left a voicemail. She never returned it. Callista stopped by once. Just once. She stood in the doorway of the nursery in progress, arms folded, eyeing the piles of baby clothes I'd sorted on the floor. "Must be hard gaining all that weight so fast, huh?" she said with a half-smile. "I mean, for someone who used to live in crop tops." She looked around, then added, "Cute setup, though. Little ambitious, maybe?" I didn't respond. I was learning that silence could be sharper than words. Beckett's phone started ringing more often at night. He'd excuse himself, stepping out onto the porch. I'd hear the gravel crunching under his shoes, the sliding door pulling shut behind him. One night I followed, stood just inside the doorway, out of his line of sight. "Yes, ma'am, I understand." "No, she hasn't said anything. I'm keeping it calm. Yes, I know. I'm trying not to feel anything right now." I stood there for a long time, the wood floor pressing into the soles of my feet. I didn't cry. I didn't walk away either. Just listened. Let the weight of that sentence lodge somewhere deep inside my ribs. The next morning, I folded one of his shirts. Light starch, still warm from the dryer. I laid it on the bed and left the room. It was spring again by the time the next Montgomery event rolled around. Another fundraiser, another excuse to rub elbows with Nashville's political darlings. I stood near the back of the room, sipping from a flute of sparkling water handed to me by a server who barely looked at me. Beckett was across the room, laughing with his cousin. Margaret stood nearby, nodding graciously to someone in pearls and too much bronzer. Callista approached, wearing emerald green silk. She didn't say hello. She raised her champagne and said, "Clear as day," to strong women who know when to stay in their lane. Several heads turned. No one blinked. Margaret didn't even look up. I felt something shift inside me. Not break, not crack, but shift. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, one hand resting on my belly. The babies kicked, soft little taps like tiny reminders. I whispered into the dim room, "We are on our own now, aren't we?" That night, I touched my stomach and whispered to my unborn twins, "We are on our own now, aren't we?" The house was still. I stayed awake long after Beckett fell asleep in the next room. I didn't cry. I was past crying. My body was too tired to grieve, and my heart, it was quietly packing its bags. A soft knock came from the hallway just after dawn. I was sitting in the rocking chair, one baby in my arms, the other in the bassinet beside me. My back ached. My chest ached worse. I looked up. "Sweetheart," Velda called gently, poking her head through the half-open door. "You look exhausted. You need rest. Let us help." Her words dripped with concern, the kind that doesn't ask permission, it assumes you're broken. She walked in holding a plastic bag from Panera and a manila envelope, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a judge entering court. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hands were busy and my trust too thin. "I brought soup," she said, "and some papers from the lawyer. Just temporary things so we can help manage the stress." She set the envelope on the dresser and pulled a chair across from me. She sat with her knees crossed and tilted her head the way she used to when I got a C in algebra. Soft, patient, condescending. "You're not thinking straight," she said. "Sleep deprivation, hormones. It's all too much. That's why there are systems in place, to protect the babies, and you." I didn't even blink, just stared at the envelope. "Beckett's already seen it," she added, sipping from her travel mug. "He agrees you need some space." That's when the nausea hit, not from pregnancy, but from the knowing that they had been planning this behind closed doors. "Did he sign it?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Does it matter?" I didn't answer. I let the moment settle, like thick fog in the room. Later, after she left, I opened the envelope. Petition to assign temporary parental authority to Velda Marin, with the line, "Due to current mental and physical exhaustion, the mother is voluntarily delegating care." Voluntarily. I folded the document in half. Then again, slid it under the linen stack in the hall closet, beneath towels that still smelled like lavender. That night I locked the door. Double-locked it, actually. Tucked the babies close beside me on the mattress. I listened to the hum of the fridge, the occasional buzz of Beckett's phone from the couch. He never came in. The morning came slow. I opened the door to find Velda back again, holding a tray. Before she could speak, I said clearly, "We're fine. Please don't come back." She blinked, took half a step forward. "Don't be dramatic, Odalis." "I'm not. I'm a mother." She stood in the hallway longer than I expected, her mouth parted slightly, like she wasn't used to being dismissed. Eventually, she turned and walked away. No hug, no goodbye. Just silence, the kind that stings more than shouting. Years passed. We lived small. One-bedroom apartment, faded curtains, carpet that frayed near the hallway. I took remote bookkeeping jobs, worked during naps, took surveys at night. The babies became toddlers, then little people, curious, resilient, unaware of how little they had and how much they were. It was a Tuesday when it happened. Ordinary day. Sunny. My daughter was brushing her doll's hair in the corner while I folded laundry. She paused, tilting her head. "Mommy," she asked, "why didn't Daddy want us?" I dropped the towel. I didn't mean to. She looked up, her face innocent. Not hurt, just wondering. I sat down slowly, pulled her into my lap. Sometimes silence is the cruelest answer, so I tried words. "Because," I said softly, brushing a curl behind her ear, "he didn't know how to love right." She thought about that, then nodded, and went back to her doll. That night, after they were asleep, I was searching the hall closet for a spare blanket when my hand grazed something familiar, the old envelope. I held it for a second. The paper was soft now, creased and faded, a little yellow around the edges. I didn't open it, didn't need to. I walked it to the kitchen, lifted the trash lid and dropped it in. No hesitation. No second look. I realized then, my children weren't something to be handed off. They were the reason I stood back up. A week later, just after I'd dropped the twins at preschool and was rinsing oatmeal from the sink, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. The number looked vaguely familiar. Something from high school. I played the message, hands still wet. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Odalis. I just saw the photos. I didn't want to bother you, but I hope you're holding up okay. It must be so hard. Love you, girl. Loss?" I dried my hands, pressed redial. It rang twice before Natalie picked up. "Hey," she said, chipper, then hesitated. "Wait, you don't know, do you?" "Know what?" I asked. My voice was flat, steady, but I already felt it in my chest, the cold creeping up my ribs. "Velda's cousin, Sam? You used to call him Uncle Sam, remember? He passed. His funeral was last weekend. Big service at Green Hill Chapel. Your mom and sister gave the eulogy. You weren't there?" I sank into a chair before my legs gave out. "No one told me," I said. There was silence on the line. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I assumed you knew." I opened Facebook after hanging up, searched Green Hill Chapel. There it was. Dozens of photos. Callista in a black dress that looked like it came straight off a magazine cover, standing by the casket with perfect posture. My mother beside her. Somber, elegant. Under one photo someone commented, "Beautiful words, Callista. Uncle Sam would be proud." I kept scrolling. Eventually, I found a link to the live stream, still archived on the funeral home's page. I clicked. It started with organ music, panning shots of the pews. I spotted cousins, a few faces from childhood. Then Callista walked to the podium. She stood tall, eyes glossy but not red. She smiled just enough to look tragic, then began. "Sam was like a second father to me growing up. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to tie a tie. Yes, a tie. He always said I was the strong one, the one who'd carry this family forward." My breath caught. Not one mention of me. Not once. No we. No us. No acknowledgement that Sam had come to every dance recital, mailed me a card every birthday, helped me get my first job. He was the only adult in our family who ever said, "I'm proud of you," without a side of judgment. And they erased me. Deliberately. I watched the rest of the video with the volume low. At one point, the camera panned to Velda, sitting in the front row, dabbing at her cheek with a handkerchief. She nodded proudly during Callista's speech, like she'd choreographed the whole performance. Maybe she had. That night, after the kids went to bed, I dug through my dresser for something I hadn't touched in years. Uncle Sam's last birthday card to me. It had arrived a few months before he passed, one of those long, glittery ones from the grocery store. Inside, he'd scribbled in his crooked, all-caps handwriting, "You always had the kindest eyes. Don't let them make you smaller." I hadn't really understood what he meant then. Now I did. I cried. For the first time in a long time, I let myself break. Not loudly, not wildly. Just quiet sobs in the dark, holding a piece of cardboard that meant more than most of the people still breathing. By morning, I didn't feel better, but I did feel clearer. I printed a still from the video, Callista at the podium, Velda clapping in the pews. I taped it to the wall above my desk. Below it, in red marker, I wrote, "Rewrite this." Not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done being edited out. That was the night I stopped asking for space in their story and began writing my own. I pinned the still frame above my desk, right where I could see it every time I looked up from my sewing machine. Callista, hands lifted in pretend grief. Velda behind her, clapping like it was opening night. That image didn't fuel hatred, it fueled something quieter, firmer, a line I wouldn't cross back over again. The kids were asleep on a floor mat beside me, arms and legs splayed like starfish after a long day. I adjusted the lamp, turned down the brightness on my laptop, and slid another piece of soft denim under the presser foot. The sound of stitching had become something like breathing. Repetitive, necessary. I'd just uploaded my second listing on Etsy earlier that week, hand-stitched toddler overalls with a little sunflower patch on the front. I'd even handwritten a thank you note to my first customer in Michigan and tucked it in with a coupon for her next order. When the twins woke up from their nap that afternoon, I snapped a picture of them wearing matching versions and posted it on my new business page. It got 37 likes. For me, it felt like applause. "Mommy, you're famous now!" My daughter giggled when she saw the hearts on the screen. I laughed with her, kissed the top of her curls, and told her that no matter what, she'd always be my favorite model. For a moment, things felt full, like maybe I didn't need anything else, until 3 days later. I was in the kitchen reheating leftover spaghetti when a message popped up on my phone. Just a link, no text, from a friend I hadn't talked to in months. I tapped it. Instagram, Callista's profile. There she was, posing next to a little girl in the exact same overalls I'd designed. The same sunflower patch, the same fabric blend, the same pocket stitch that I had created late one night while watching reruns with one eye open. Her caption read, "So proud of this little project I've been dreaming of forever. Handmade love, new things coming soon." 12,000 likes in under 4 hours. Comments pouring in. "Callista, you're amazing. OMG, I want one for my niece." This is what real creativity looks like. No credit, no tag, nothing, just applause. At first, I froze, then I scrolled, until I had seen enough to feel like I'd been hollowed out. That night, I didn't eat dinner, just sat at the table and stared at the wall while the twins colored beside me. They asked for bedtime stories. I told them too. My voice stayed steady, but inside me, a quiet storm was taking shape. The next morning, I called my mother. Her voice was sharp but polite. I asked, "Did you see Callista's post?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, about time one of you girls made something of herself." I blinked. "You mean Callista?" "Of course," she said. "It's good someone in this family is using their hands for more than diapers and drama. You should be proud of her." I didn't say anything. Not then. Not after she added, "Don't be petty, Odalis. Jealousy doesn't look good on anyone." We hung up. I deleted my post. The one with my twins. The one that had made me feel, just for a second, like I was building something of my own. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I sat on the living room floor folding scraps of cotton into piles. I wasn't sure what I was doing at first, just moving my hands. Then my daughter shuffled out of her room in her princess pajamas, holding a piece of paper. She crawled into my lap and handed it to me. A crayon drawing, a little store with a red awning, 2 stick-figure kids in front, a woman behind the counter smiling big with long brown hair like mine. At the bottom, in shaky block letters, it said, "My mom makes magic." I held it to my chest for a long while. Didn't speak, didn't blink. I walked back to my desk, pulled out my sewing box, and grabbed a square of fabric I'd been saving. That night I stitched something new, not just clothes, a label, little blessings. Each letter, carefully hand-sewn, not printed, not faked, not borrowed. Mine. That night I didn't cry. I just sewed, and sewed, and sewed. By the time the sun hinted through the kitchen blinds, I had finished 3 full outfits, matching sets, tiny tags reading little blessings stitched gently into each neckline. I lined them up on the table, wiped the sleep from my eyes, and reached for my phone. I wish I hadn't. At the top of my feed was Callista. Her face filled the frame, perfectly filtered, perfectly framed, with a mug of coffee she probably didn't make, and a caption that just read, "Story time." I watched it, every second. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. "There are people," she began, with that performative sigh influencers love, who use their children as accessories, or worse, as props to get sympathy sales. Some folks will neglect nap time and meal time just to build a brand. It's sad, really. Then she flipped to a blurred image. It was mine. A screenshot from the post I'd taken down. My twins were barely recognizable, their faces blurred, but I knew the pattern on those overalls like I knew the freckles on their cheeks. The comments came fast. "Who would do that to their kids?" "Shame on her, just say you're lazy." "She's jealous of your talent, babe." Some of the usernames were familiar. Family friends, church women, one of Velda's bunco buddies. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the screen as the view count climbed, and then I put the phone down. A week earlier, something inside me must have known. I had walked into a lawyer's office in downtown Nashville, nothing fancy, just a 2-story with cracked leather chairs, and filed a trademark application for Little Blessings. In my name, sole owner, no investors, no family team, just me. And I had asked that the lawyer hold on to documentation, just in case. Just in case someone tried to make a name for themselves using mine. That just in case was now. I called him. By noon, I was sitting across from his desk again, this time with screenshots, side-by-side design comparisons, and the email confirmation that Callista had booked an event space for her so-called line launch. "I'm not looking to sue," I said, sliding over the printed Instagram post. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I just want her to stop before she takes something she didn't earn." He nodded. "A cease and desist should do the trick, and we'll copy the venue so they understand the legal risk." That night, I sat on the living room floor. My kids were asleep again. This time in sleeping bags they refused to leave, even though their beds were a foot away. I whispered into the dark, "Was I wrong to fight back?" No one answered, until an hour later. My phone buzzed. Voicemail, a small mom blogger in Vermont. I'd shipped her a onesie with tiny cloud patches 2 weeks earlier. "Hi. I just wanted to say thank you. Your clothes? They feel like love. My little girl wore hers to bed and said it felt like magic pajamas." I didn't cry, but my chest tightened in that way it does when something both hurts and heals at the same time. The next morning, Callista's launch event was postponed due to scheduling conflicts. The venue quietly removed all mentions of it from their site. And Velda, she posted a vague status on Facebook. "Some people tear others down just because they can't rise themselves. No names, just venom." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I logged into my website, littleblessingsmade.com. There were 57 new orders. I scrolled to the About Me section, looked at the final line, which used to say, "Handmade with love in Nashville." I updated it, founded by a single mother with no help, no shortcuts, and no apologies. That was the day I stopped defending my story and started owning it. The morning after, the light coming in through the blinds felt different. Not softer, not brighter, just clearer. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't feel drained. Instead, I poured a second cup of coffee and checked on my twins who were still tangled in blankets on the living room carpet. They'd fallen asleep watching cartoons while I worked at the sewing machine, humming quietly to myself for hours. At around 3:15, the school bus dropped off my daughter. Her tiny sneakers hit the steps with urgency. I met her at the door, expecting the usual snack request, but instead she pulled out a folded piece of paper from her backpack and handed it to me like it was something sacred. "I made this at school," she said, eyes sparkling. "It's for the Hero Project." I opened it, and then I sat down. There, in crayon and glitter glue, was a drawing of me. I had a red cape. My brown hair was bigger than real life. My arms held both my twins, and we were all surrounded by floating dresses and tiny scissors. Above my head was a speech bubble, "You're safe now." Below it, in bold marker, she had written, "My mommy is a superhero. She never stopped being brave." I didn't speak. I just pressed the paper to my chest. Then I walked into the kitchen, leaned against the fridge, and let the tears fall. Not bitter ones, not angry ones, but the kind that come when you've carried something heavy for too long and someone, somehow, lets you know they saw you. I pinned the drawing above my sewing table, next to the old note from Uncle Sam and the crayon sketch from 2 chapters ago. A silent altar, a reminder. That night, as I was folding laundry in the living room, a message popped up from my cousin Maureen. "Hey, sorry about what they said in the family group chat. It was harsh." I frowned. "Group chat? What chat?" I replied. Maureen didn't answer immediately, but when she did, she sent a screenshot. They had a thread. Not just Velda and Callista, uncles, aunts, even my godmother. And it was full of poison. "She's always playing the victim. Beckett was right to leave her. She was always too soft. Now she thinks she's Oprah because she makes baby pants." They called me everything but my name. The same people who used to call me for help when their kids needed babysitting. The same relatives I had made favors for, sewn napkins for their weddings, handmade holiday stockings. I turned off the phone. I didn't text Maureen back. What could I say? Instead, I pulled out an envelope from my desk drawer. I had received it the week prior, a formal invitation from a daytime talk show segment called Mothers Who Made It Anyway. I'd been sitting on it, unsure. But now? I emailed the producer. Subject line, "I'm in." In the body, I wrote, "If I tell this story, I want it to focus on rebuilding, not revenge. Let's show what happens when women choose to rise." I clicked send. What came next moved fast. Fittings, childcare arrangements, emails with the show's assistant producer. I taught my daughter how to braid her brother's hair while I organized order confirmations on my tablet. I stayed up late editing my About Me video, keeping it raw, honest. In one clip, I simply said, "They told their version of my life for years. Now I'll tell mine. I don't need to name names. They already know who they are." A week later, I dressed carefully. A muted green dress I'd made myself, paired with earrings I hadn't worn in years. My kids were staying with a trusted neighbor. As I buckled my heels and checked the time, I passed the mirror near the front door and froze. For the first time in a long while, I didn't look invisible. I looked like someone stepping into her own power. Driving through Nashville, I passed the little white church on the corner, Velda's church. The one where she sat front row every Sunday, head tilted like royalty. I didn't slow down. I didn't need a seat at their table anymore. I had built my own. The studio lobby was colder than I expected. Maybe it was just nerves. Or maybe it was the weight of walking into a place where people were actually waiting to hear me. I hadn't brought a friend, no assistant, no stylist. Just a simple outfit I had sewn the night before, pale lavender, soft cotton, no frills, something that felt like me. A production assistant offered me a bottle of water as I waited by the double doors leading to the green room. I shook my head gently. "I'm good. I've waited long enough." She smiled, not quite understanding the layers behind what I'd just said, but kind enough not to ask. Minutes later, I was seated under studio lights. The host, bright smile, confident posture, leaned forward just a touch as the camera rolled. Joining us today is Odalis Marin, single mom of 3, founder of the Little Blessings line that's taken social media by storm. Odalis, from abandoned to thriving, how did you survive it all? I took a breath, not to calm myself, but to steady the truth. I survived, I said slowly, because I didn't let silence define me. I was erased, quietly. I rebuilt, silently. And now I'm just here. She nodded, visibly moved. You never named names. You just showed up. I don't need to name them, I replied softly. They already know who they are. The segment played over images of my twins, clips of their laughter at home, shots of me sewing at the dining table with late-night coffee and toy cars scattered between fabric rolls. My daughter's drawing, the superhero mom, was shown with my voiceover layered on top. I didn't plan for this, but I wasn't going to raise my children in shame. Somewhere in East Nashville, my neighbor Judith turned up the volume on her laundry room TV. In another house, Velda sat stiffly on her couch, hands folded tightly, her expression unreadable. And on a bright screen in a different home, Callista scrolled through comments under the show's post. She's incredible. I wish I had her strength. This is what grace under fire looks like. I didn't see them watch. I didn't have to. I felt it in the absence of their denial. After the interview wrapped, I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The sun was sharp against the pavement, and the morning traffic had picked up. I stood still for a second, letting the warmth hit my skin. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Nothing from Velda. Nothing from Callista. Not a single well done. Not even a snide remark. And it was the first silence from them that didn't sting. That afternoon, I made it home just in time to pick up the twins from preschool and grab my daughter from the bus. As we entered the house, she ran ahead and stopped by the fridge where her superhero drawing still hung. She turned to me, all bright eyes and bubbling energy. "Mommy, you looked so strong on TV." I crouched down, brushing her hair behind her ear. I wasn't trying to look strong, I just told the truth. Later that evening, I stopped by the store to grab dinner supplies. While comparing tomato sauces, a woman with salt and pepper hair approached me slowly. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the mom from that show this morning?" I hesitated. "Yes." Her eyes welled with quiet recognition. "I saw it. You reminded me of who I used to be." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it land. "Then maybe it's time she came back," I said. She nodded, a slow tear escaping before she smiled and walked away. That night, after the kids were asleep and the kitchen cleaned, I sat down with a warm cup of tea. My phone lit up again. This time it wasn't another order or a message from the studio. It was Beckett. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a while. He had said nothing for 5 years, watched from a distance while his family dragged mine, while my daughter cried on birthdays, while I built something from nothing. No apology, just 3 words. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. I just pressed delete. Some voices didn't need to be heard again to know what they'd always sound like. The next morning, I walked past the corner cafe where 5 years ago I'd cried into a lukewarm cup of decaf, pretending I was just tired and not devastated. Back then, I used to hope someone would ask if I was okay. Now, I barely glanced at the place. My eyes were fixed on what stood across the street. A clean storefront, pale blue with gold lettering that read, "Little Blessings." The sign wasn't lit yet. It was still early. But the moment I unlocked the door, something clicked inside me. It wasn't just a shop. It was the proof that I had survived everything they threw at me and came out not just standing, but building. Opening day was modest. No press, no velvet ropes, just neighbors, moms with strollers, 2 high school girls who had followed my sewing videos online. I stood behind the counter in a hand-stitched navy dress and a canvas apron with my logo embroidered in yellow. My twins were in the back, eating graham crackers and giggling under a fort made of fabric scraps. The first customer, a young mom with sleepy eyes and a baby strapped to her chest, picked out a tiny dress with sunflower pockets. I tied the ribbon myself and handed it to her like it was sacred. This brand started when I had nothing but my babies and a borrowed sewing machine, I told her. Now it's theirs, as much as it is mine. She smiled, eyes glossy. Feels like there's hope in the stitches. Behind me, framed on the back wall, was my daughter's superhero drawing, the one with me in a cape, holding 2 kids, surrounded by little dresses and a sewing machine. Customers kept pausing to read the caption, "My mommy is a superhero." She never stopped being brave. As the afternoon sun slanted in through the front windows, the bell above the door rang. I looked up, and there she was. Margaret Montgomery, Beckett's mother. She hadn't aged much, still in beige heels, clutching a leather purse like it might shield her from whatever she was about to say. She didn't offer a hug, didn't offer a smile, just looked around the shop and said flatly, "You did well. I didn't expect that." I met her gaze, steady, calm. "That's because you never saw me," I said. "But I never needed you to." She opened her mouth, maybe to defend herself, maybe not. But I didn't wait. I stepped aside, gestured toward the door. "You're welcome to shop or not, but this space? This one doesn't require your approval." She left without buying anything. And I didn't watch her go. Later that week, I found myself walking with the kids past the neighborhood I grew up in. Velda's old house still had the same flower beds out front, though they looked more tired now. We passed slowly, my son pulling at my sleeve, wanting to go faster. "Just a second," I whispered. In my hand I held a note, one I'd written weeks ago, folded and refolded so many times it had worn thin. I'd written it after the TV interview, when the silence from my mother and sister said more than any insult ever had. It was a letter I'd meant to deliver, not to change their minds, but to let them know what I had carried, and what I was finally setting down. But standing there, outside that porch I once cried on, I realized something. They didn't deserve my words. So I tore the letter in half, then in half again, and let the wind scatter the pieces across the sidewalk. That night, we curled up on the living room rug, me and the kids, a plate of cookies between us, music low. My daughter rested her head on my lap. My son, with his mouth half full, asked quietly, "Mom, do you miss them?" The question landed soft, but deep. I didn't rush the answer. "I miss the version of them I hoped they'd be," I said, "but I don't miss who they really were." The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Later, as the kids drifted to sleep, I stood by the window and looked out over the neighborhood. I thought about what healing used to mean to me. Reconciliation, apologies, maybe even a tearful hug at some future holiday. Now? Healing looked like watching my kids sleep safe, like owning something I'd made with my hands, like never shrinking again for someone else's comfort. Sometimes healing doesn't look like reconciliation. It looks like building something so strong you no longer need what broke you. They went quiet when the truth aired. But I found my voice, and never lowered it again.